Good afternoon. I'm Mandy Logan, and welcome to CyberRiskTV's live coverage at InfoSec World 2025, coming to you from beautiful Orlando, Florida. We're kicking off an exciting week of conversations with some of the brightest minds in cybersecurity to tackle this year's theme, the Great Cyber Race. Throughout the week, we'll also encourage you to look at the website, look at the materials that will be available, and definitely plan ahead for next year as the recent editions of the CISO Summit, the Women in Cyber Summit, and the extremely relevant AI Summit will look to expand and really create an enhanced view of the community that is now 31 years strong. So again, I am Mandy Logan. Please stay tuned and we will go right into some beautiful executive interviews next. Welcome to InfoSec World 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRiskTV studio on the expo floor at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Orlando. I'm your host, Mandy Logan, and joining me for this interview is Perry Schumacher, Chief Strategy Officer and Partner at Ridge IT Cyber. Welcome, Perry.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am so very glad you're here. And as we got to briefly touch on before we began recording, I was very intrigued and encouraged by your background precisely because of the non-conventional nature it has. That is something near and dear to my heart, as I ended up here in a very exceedingly non-traditional way.
Yep.
And find it to be such a mark of even cybersecurity and defense and offensive strategists, like whenever we have that mental ability to not just pivot, I'm going to use the corporate term, not just pivot, but to understand that there's a lot that goes into survival, adjustment, preparation, and then being able to actually substantially build what will work long term.
Yep.
It sounds to me like a lot of your focus has gone into not just what you're doing at the moment, but what will take care of large organizations and even mid-sized organizations.
Yeah.
Before we get too deep in the technical things, will you tell me like at least 3 key points from your unique trajectory that you pull from, like whether that's from pumping gas in the Amazon, intriguing things in Africa, the aeronautical space, like tell me.
Well, the first thing is be a student. I think that's, when you have a background like mine and you've done so many different varied things, you have to be willing to study. Stay up late at night, figure out what it is that you need to be doing, how you need to be doing it. I think another thing that I learned by doing all of that is kind of just don't have sacred cows. Don't marry your ideas. Because it will stop you from being able to study properly. When you're pivoting, a good idea in this sector may be a bad idea in another. And it's just the same idea, right? And based on context is how you actually need to approach a problem. And I think those are probably two of the key things, between doing all the weird things that I've done that kind of stuck with me. And then anything, philosophy is a great guide for life.
It very much is. So with philosophy, your mention of that, what is Ridge IT's philosophy when it comes to really supporting mid-sized organizations?
Yeah. Well, first off, I like to, when I'm talking with my clients, the idea is you got to have like a target. Like, so what's the goal of cybersecurity? Why are we doing this in the first place? And I like to simplify it because it can get very detailed and complex when you go into the nuance. Everybody has a tool, Zero Trust, Comply to Connect, there's acronyms galore. But at the end of the day, if we're in cybersecurity, we're after 2 key objectives. One is we need to keep the business running. So no ransomware, no interruptions. That's what our job is. 2 is protect the data. So if we can funnel every solution that we look at underneath those 2 primary objectives, things make a lot more sense, right? So it's kind of keeping things simple because they do get complex as to how you go about doing it. But understanding that really is all you're doing kind of can help you simplify your way through that logical path you've got to go to make a decision.
Well, absolutely. And then do you feel that when you're discussing options with your clients, you are providing guardrails that give them the most useful outcome?
Well, that's always the goal, right? But the reality is that when you're talking to a mid-sized company, there's more than just, I want the best solution out there that can secure me, because that comes with a price tag. And every one of us are dealing with a budget. So it's about working through these compromises of, hey, I can't quite afford this solution. It's the best one, but maybe if I buy this one and I configure this that way, I can get a similar outcome while staying within the budget that my executives have blessed me with, and not going over it. So I think a lot of it is understanding enough solutions and enough configurations to help people kind of navigate that space.
Well, that sounds like a very fulfilling and a substantially grounded way to allow mid-sized organizations who I have a lot of respect for. I mean, I have a lot of respect for all individuals who are beginning companies or
Yeah.
are in any portion of such extreme development. So small, medium, large, there
Yeah.
is so much to handle.
Yeah.
But mid-sized companies, I feel like, there's that little, the forgotten stepchild, or the
Yeah,
forgotten
no, it's true.
middle child, that they may be so robust in what they actually want to bring to market and bring to the world.
Yeah.
But they do generally have not necessarily I never want to disparage any person, but they won't have the cream of the crop pick necessarily if
Yeah.
you're going based on standard metrics that are valued. Now,
Yeah.
you may run into a situation, as I have seen often in dealing with security practitioners and researchers and in public sector, where you have individuals that are heart-based, or they have a motivation toward what they are doing.
Yeah.
And they feel extreme stress around the giant attack surface they have to handle
Yeah.
with the smaller budget and perhaps only a 3-person IT.
Yeah.
And that's not even, we're not discussing just security. We're talking an
Yeah.
entire,
Yeah, that's their IT staff.
that's the whole IT
Yeah.
staff.
The networking guy's part-time gig is security. Yeah.
Exactly. So what have you found that Ridge IT really excels at whenever you're discussing options with a team who has such streamlined resources and functionality, but may have a very deep desire to perform extremely well?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that, there's several levers we can pull to kind of lower operating costs, right? So you've got the first thing, I call it build the house, right? So what does it cost to do an implementation? And that's all kind of one-time fees. And then after that, it's the operational cost that really matters. Because that's what hits the bottom line over the next 3, 4, 5 years for the organization. Each one of these tools, they have integrations, APIs that we can leverage that make them a little bit more robust. And by doing that, we can lower the human cost on their side, right? So we don't need quite as many people inside of your IT staff because we've integrated the solutions where, say Zscaler talks to CrowdStrike and tells it to do an action based on what it saw. Well, that's one less person that really has to take an action. That's less time you spend because the tools are interacting with each other and doing that task. So you're more supervising the thing that was done than trying to find out what was wrong and do it yourself. So there's a cost savings there for them and being able to get that 3-man team to be more functional. And then there's the typical part where it's like, hey, we'll monitor your environment for you. We do it for a lot of people, so economies of scale. We have qualified people with playbooks. We make sure that we clear the house every time we see a detection, and we can add on to your team. And the key thing with us that I think makes us a little bit different, a lot of people, when they engage you, they want to be like, oh, well, I own the environment. I'm going to take away your admin rights, and I have the admin rights. And to me, that never made sense as an entrepreneur myself. If you try to tell me you're going to take control away from me and I'm going to pay you for the privilege, it's just not going to go well, that conversation. So our business doesn't engage in that. We really look at it as, you've got 3 people, which you should for your continuity. You should never allow me to replace your team. I think that's bad for your business. And then we're an extension to them. And that's really where we strive to be. We have specialized skill sets that those 3 people have no reason to develop because they're taking care of your ERP, be it SAP or QuickBooks.
Right.
They're taking care of Salesforce. And the guy learned Salesforce last week.
Right.
And by learn it, he watched a YouTube video.
Absolutely.
Right. So he's having to have this breadth of knowledge between those 3 people. And now you've got this one area of cybersecurity that if you fail, it can have significant consequence to your business. He doesn't have the time. So you get the tools, you set it up, get some economy there. You look for a good partner that actually wants to do a value add situation, and you partner there, and you can get that at a cost that most small businesses can find very palatable, right? And that's what we try to do.
And so in a few words, what is your passion at Ridge IT that like we do this portion on top of it? This is our bread and butter because we are so good at it.
I mean, there's a lot, really. We partner with certain vendors where we have a deep skill set that even the vendors themselves will tell you that we're better at deploying their solutions than they are.
Understood.
So we've really taken pride in selecting just a few of the best in breed, and we built out a team to support each one of those solutions. So if you buy something from us, you're like, hey, I want to buy CrowdStrike or something like that. When you call us and need help or advice or something, we actually have the people that will have the answer, that know how to do the deployments, the implementations, the best practices. You have that all in one place, unlike some vendors, and there's nothing wrong with this, that you buy the solution, and if you call for help, they'll giggle, and they're like, that's really cute, but we sell it, we don't really support it, right? So we support everything that we have, and I think that's kind of, I guess that's our calling card. And we've been doing zero trust since before it became a marketing buzzword. So pre-COVID, we developed a zero trust architecture. During COVID, we got to test how good it actually was. Really? Because during COVID, everybody got budget. Everybody wanted to move to least privilege access, zero trust, comply to connect, much of the same concepts under different banners, right? And we've seen our solution work over and over again. We're employing it to the government. So I think that's a specialty from a technical perspective, is creating that architecture, that ecosystem for our clients.
That's gorgeous. And so during that time at COVID, in my own ecosphere, in my brain, what goes on, I think of the mid-sized companies that were faced with such an extremely complex pivot to remote work.
Oh, yeah.
To cloud storage, to many other things that hadn't been the norm. And
absolutely,
they were then stretched not just wide, but to the depth and height that no one could have expected.
Yeah.
And that to me makes, just as a person, we're not even going into the technical details and into GRC and policies and everything else that has to be handled. Were there any particular moments that stick out with mid-sized companies during COVID that you go, wow, we were able to help the human firewall and help their 100%. Security?
I mean, we get phone calls. During COVID is when a lot of people realize that free VPN doesn't work very well when you try to scale it across the company, right?
Absolutely not. Right.
So they wake up one morning and they're like, hey, we can't go to the office, but everybody somehow needs to connect. And that free VPN just ain't cutting the work. And so they're desperately calling, like, how can I get something? And if we all remember during COVID, try to go buy hardware. That was fun. It's going to come from China. Oh, great.
Excellent.
Yeah, on a boat. Okay, yeah. So let's just wait until after COVID, it will arrive. Right. So they couldn't turn to those things. And so with a couple of SASE solutions, and that's when SASE started really growing in the market, right? So we were able to turn people around where they're calling on Friday going, I don't know how we're going to continue running the business. Do you guys have anything? And go, sure, here it is. It's affordable. If you sign this today, by Monday, you're running again. And we did that over and over and over again for hundreds of companies, getting a phone call within 2 to 3 days, getting them up and running and operational with their people working from home. And that was I didn't get to sleep a lot during COVID. It was a very intense time for the company, but we helped a tremendous amount of people when they didn't know what SASE was and how quickly we could deploy this and expand your I don't care that your people are at home. I don't care where they're sitting. It doesn't matter to us. They can go to not the moon. There's no internet there, but short of someplace without internet, you can go anywhere you want. We're going to protect you. You're going to be fine. You're going to be able to get access to your resources. And we did that for a tremendous amount of people.
How comforting, and going with the idea that security is an emotion or it's a feeling.
Yeah.
That is beneficial.
Yeah.
Now we have pretty much abundantly used our time.
Yeah.
And so for our audience, I want to encourage that they look into the keynote that your CEO gave earlier.
Absolutely.
And I want to mention a few things that we didn't get to. From the keynote, I was curious about the 12-week deployment timeline and what that particularly referenced, so perhaps our audience can contact your company and understand that more.
Yeah.
And I also understand that is there some kind of technology partnership you have with Gartner?
No, we work primarily with Zscaler, CrowdStrike, not with Gartner.
Not with Gartner. Okay, and what else in the last 10 seconds that we have, what else would you really like to drive home to the hearts and souls of those people on the front line trying to figure out what to do?
Don't lose faith. They'll give you budget eventually. No, when you're looking at security, again, I just like to drive home the first point is when communicating to some executives, we've got to understand the purpose, right? Which again, business continuity. The reason that you have me here as a cybersecurity professional is to make sure that this business continues to run. There's no disruption in operations. And the second reason you have me here is to make sure that all the key data of this company remains secure and within this company at all times. And just really using that as your tool internally to justify why you need things. I think an executive, from my perspective, has a little further understanding of that and kind of going down that talk track and what lies in, and maybe that will be helpful to them. I find it helpful to some of our clients.
That makes complete sense. And I'm thinking too, we didn't get to touch on it, but being able to get the executives to understand that the benefits that come with AI and also the risks in adjusting there.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other topic we need to get to, but
yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today, Perry.
Well, I appreciate it.
So to find out more about Ridge IT Cyber, please visit securityweekly.com/Ridge ISW. Thank you, Perry, for joining us. Now, thank you all for joining us at InfoSec World 2025, and please visit securityweekly.com/ISW for more information. Stick around, we'll be back after a short break with more interviews. Welcome to InfoSec World 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRiskTV studio on the expo floor at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Orlando. I am your host, Mandy Logan, and joining me for this interview is Allison, CISO, advisor to Sicura. Welcome, Marene. How are you?
I have many titles, so it's
do.
okay. I'm an advisor to Sicura and a number of other small VCs helping them along.
But you have been and held fantastic and substantial roles as a CISO yourself.
Oh, yeah, no, I did that. I retired and I've recovered from being a CISO.
How did you recover? How did you do that?
Well, it took a while. So, of course, I was at Johnson & Johnson right as we were doing the vaccine. So that was a lot of stress. And, there's always I'm okay, but the reality was it took about 6 months afterwards for me to be able to breathe and read and feel comfortable and not feel like attached to my cell phone or my computer all the time.
Oh, absolutely. I would. It boggles my mind to think about the intricacies that you have faced and with your team during that time. And of course, you had such a substantial pathway toward getting to that point, right? You pulled from many things that you had put forth effort to learn through decades.
Oh, it's absolutely correct. I mean, one of the things I always said, I was about ready to retire before COVID struck, and then my company, Johnson & Johnson, said, okay, we're going to make a vaccine. And I thought to myself, if not me, who else could be in this position? And this is not the right time to leave. So I delayed my departure a couple of years, but I always felt like I could reach into my quiver and pull out another arrow. I understand about insider threat. I understand about nation state attacks. I understand about this. And it was bringing all of that type of elements together over the course of the career.
And now with that, was there more focus then on your part being the securing of the pipeline that allowed the vaccines to go out, or more on the adjustments that needed to take place in the Johnson & Johnson workforce?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. We're done here. We understand now.
It was really, to make a drug at a pharmaceutical corporation takes 10, 15, 20 years normally.
Right.
And we were able to accelerate the pipeline. And again, Johnson & Johnson used some of the things they had learned in the past. They made a vaccine for Ebola.
Right.
It's not commercial, but it was to help Africa and to reduce Ebola spread. And so we used our quiver and our arrows to be able to create what was needed for the vaccine. But when you accelerate any process that takes decades in a company, you will see things like, oh, okay, that gives us an opportunity here. And so we spent a lot of time looking at opportunities to make sure that the vaccine could be produced and distributed without interruption.
Beautiful. And I will say from my viewpoint, being able to pull off such a grand scale and myriad organizational point type of mission, that is separate from gender, sexuality, the identity as a woman. That's just taking care of what is needed because you had those skills and those quivers. Yet I also am curious because you were part of the first co-ed class at West Point. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. And now I will pull a little bit of a parallel from my own life, not in the same scenario, but I came from very male-dominated industries, and what I had done previously was 3% female. 3% female across the board. So when I ended up around ethical hacking and cybersecurity and looking into this career field, the fact that it was 24 or 25% female was like, oh, this is a haven. This is magnificent.
We made it now.
We've made it. And because I felt that coming from construction industry that was further entrenched, that coming into cybersecurity focused, it was a new industry. It was less than 20 years old, and there were more pivot points available. So I'm curious, with going through the first co-ed class at West Point, Do you feel that that resolve and the determination of what you knew you could do is part of what has carried you forward to right now, being able to advise numerous boards at once?
Mandy, I don't know how many people have told me, "Oh, you only got the job because you're a woman,"
And the
and I laugh. And I'm a West Point graduate, and I have electrical engineering,
right,
and I was an FBI agent
right.
and head of security for 3 major corporations. Yeah, probably because I'm a woman. And, I think people will throw things at you when they feel intimidated by you,
Right.
but I'm not going to be intimidated by their lack of knowledge and expertise. And what I see is we move into those spaces and we work well. Sometimes it's harder for us. Maybe sometimes it's a little easier. But for the most part, we have the skills and expertise, and we just have to use them. And it's when we get entrenched in what others think and concerned with it, and I'd just be like, scoff. No, I don't care. I'm just moving forward. Good for you. My company's got it.
Correct. I identify with definitely having that, no, this individual, you just provide what you are naturally capable of providing.
Right.
You move forward. And I will say, to your point, like, I was told repeatedly growing up that to excel in the male-dominated world, I needed to be 10 times better than the average guy that would apply for it in order to make it, which meant now I look back and I go, oh, I literally had the skills and the ability to a substantial degree. And that's incredibly comforting. And kind of moving away from that, I want to take a part of that into the discussion on AI and AI adoption. Now, stay with me here because I do have a purpose on this, and it is not to overwhelm you. In my anecdotal experience, there's a lot of times where I feel a traditionally more female-appearing brain will adapt to AI in a different way than a traditionally appearing male brain will. And a lot of times I see that they get substantial results from the same AI tools that their male counterparts have. Have you noticed that at all, or is that just something that I seem to notice?
I look at it a different way. I don't think it's on a line of male and female.
Okay.
I think there'll be people with different backgrounds will look at it differently.
Right.
And people from different regions of the world will look at it differently, depending upon what your whole what you bring to the table.
Right.
And that's part of, like, as a CISO, one of the things was the diversity. It wasn't about color, it wasn't about male or female. It was, what would somebody from India think versus somebody from Japan versus someone from the United States?
I agree.
To look at the wholeness of the situation. And I think the same thing happens with AI. I mean, I go into business meetings and CEOs are like, should we even look at this thing called AI? Well, if you don't look at it, you're going to be out of business soon, my friend, because everyone else is looking at it. Versus if you talk to a bunch of physicians or in the medical field and like, oh my God, AI is going to revolutionize how we look at cancer. We can solve curing cancer. And I think those are the important pieces of it, where you have to weigh at, hey, maybe we shouldn't use this, to, hey, this is the best thing since sliced bread, and it sits somewhere in the middle with some controls,
Right.
that we get the best out of it.
And I fully agree, and I generally go back to that each individual neurological system, every person's wetware operates consciousness differently.
Right.
And interacts with data and technology differently. Now, before we began recording, you mentioned some about what I would summarize as being able to get clearer or cleaner data from generative AI or AI bots and agents. And we discussed it as it's even helpful for us as individuals getting to translate our thoughts into corporate ease.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I think that's one of the greatest, is a lot of corporations have the Chat GPT as part of their systems. Now, they have controlled what the data goes. There's not always outbound data, but it's learning about its company. So when you have someone from IT who can only speak, IT geek or cyber geek,
Right.
and you have to present something, because that was one of my hardest jobs as a CISO, was I've got to take what my SOC analyst has just told me, and I now have to translate it into what I'm going to tell the CEO. What's the risk? What's important? What does it mean for our company? And that would take me hours. If I could do it in 5 minutes, I'd be in. I'd love that. Sign me up for that AI.
For sure. And now, for myself, I feel like there's a certain amount of mental load and fatigue that is removed from me and allows me to be a clearer operative in whatever thing I am taking care of, because I use AI or my bots, or I used specific LLMs.
Right. Oh no, it's magnificent, especially IT folks are not always known as the great literary writers,
True.
and to be able to take something you've written and to be able to give it to AI, and it comes back with something that is intelligent, comes across very knowledgeable and story-like, versus it being very IT. I love it. I mean, I've always loved my IT engineers. They know they're my faves, but don't put them in front of the board to talk about the business risk of NotPetya.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And the inverse. I mean, I feel like it also gives the perhaps non-technical, at least not cybersecurity ingrained executives a chance to go, hey, Grok 4.5 expert, give me more detail on what
What
my
does this
team,
mean?
what does this mean? Because I actually do want to support our security teams. I actually do want to get
Correct.
and understand what's going forward.
Well, and you also have some cybersecurity folks that may be more on the what I call, like, if there's any vulnerability whatsoever anywhere, then you're going to go to security hell, which may or may not
I
be
agree.
really the business risk. And so it also helps the business executive to be able to understand, what are you really talking about and what is the risk there. And one of the things, no matter what the risk was that came out or what vulnerability was, the first 24 hours was what does this mean to my company? Is this really do I have this technology that they're even talking about?
Right.
When NotPetya came out, and it was MEDOCs. So we run in SCCM, where do we have MEDOCs? And it comes like, we have one group in China and one group in the Ukraine. I'm thinking it's not the one in China, so now let's focus on the Ukraine. And when we find these things out, it is extremely helpful. And then what is the business risk here?
Oh, yes. And I'll speak very quickly on that, because one of my philosophies now is that the use of AI can actually unburden the workforce. We know this, and we're looking
Right.
at automation. We know that the data heavy and driven decisions can be aggregated and much more easily used by looking at summaries from AI versus humans having to try to go through the bog of all of the data.
Right. Well, how about when you're trying to set something up, right? I mean, remember in the days when you'd have to take out the warranty books and you're
Right.
reading through on the setup versus the QR code, or
Right.
versus the YouTube video, or
Or
right?
the app that you can absolutely
Yeah.
it takes you step by step by step. And I like to believe that at some point that means that printers won't be the death trap of every bit of technology, but I'm not sure we're there yet.
I don't know. I'm still using my printer more than I want to. HP is very happy with me.
Good. I know that you are here graciously supporting the CEO of Sicura. Is there anything you can share with us right now from your prepared presentation?
First of all, and I'm going to take a little bit out of the technology side, we have a bunch of female CEOs out there in the VC world, and supporting them is absolutely amazing. And Lisa is amazing, and I'm finding it just great. She came from NSA, and her knowledge and expertise. I think you're going to interview her in a little bit.
Yes.
So I find that absolutely amazing. But second is from her work and looking at how the infrastructure is secured, and being able to have a technology that you can run a scan or continuous control monitoring of the infrastructure. People like to think you can set and forget the infrastructure, except that they have an entire IT department. And no matter what you do, no matter how good you are at it, things change in the night. And to be able to go through and have a software that's going to help you and assure that nothing has changed, especially in the critical infrastructure areas, is amazing.
It is. Like, that is, since my heart is near and dear with critical infrastructure, absolutely. I will say for our audience, make sure to check out Sicura's SCM platform, a new form of software that will provide, is showing great promise and ability to provide a much more thorough coverage, as you're mentioning.
Exactly. And we used to do this before, remember? I mean, it used to be security technicians checking every piece of equipment and going in. The auditors, we don't tell the auditors about it because then they can do it automated too. But when you have that automated, you can now look at and make sure you're secure, your platforms are all secure in the way you intended, without having to manually go in and check.
And that's gorgeous and relieving. And I think it goes along with what I say as all of evolution shows that self-healing systems are the ones that dominate.
Right.
So we will continue with that.
It's secure by design, not by chance.
Exactly. Thank you, Marene, so very much.
Thank you. It's a great mandate.
This is wonderful. Thank you to our audience for joining us. For all InfoSec World 2025 coverage by Cyber Risk Alliance, please visit securityweekly.com/ISW. Stick around. We'll be back right after this short break with more live interviews.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Marene.
It's great. I think we could go for hours.
We could. Welcome to InfoSec World 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRiskTV studio on the expo floor at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Orlando. I'm your host, Mandy Logan, and joining me for this interview is Ryan Heritage, advisor at Sicura. Welcome, Ryan.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I am so very glad you were here. And one thing I am interested in is you're now advising at Sicura. You have your eye on what is going on here and what's coming in the future, coming off of Cyber Command. But how did you get here from infantry?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Good question, and it's been an interesting road. So, started off in the infantry for about 25 years, for the first 25, and then as I was finishing up regimental command, so you can imagine commanding several infantry battalions, so thousands of Marines and sailors. I got a call one day from then Lieutenant General Stewart, who's unfortunately passed away. I had deployed with him in Iraq, and he said, I'd like you to come on up to Marine Forces Cyber Command. So it's the Marine component that supports U.S. Cyber Command. And I went up as his deputy and his chief of staff and found myself really enjoying that environment. I think taking a lot of lessons that I'd learned over the past 25 years as an infantry officer, being able to bring those into the cyber domain, and I've been there ever since. And I bounced back and forth in and out of cyber for the last probably 10 years or so. Haven't finished up, just retired, effective 1 June this summer.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was great. Had a fantastic time in the Marine Corps, and my last assignment was the Director of Operations at U.S. Cyber Command.
That's so fascinating. I feel like there's so many very grounded and real things that we can take from there. Because when I think of infantry, I think of a very kind of hardcore frontline, grounded take on not only thinking like the attacker, but literally having to do what is required right now with the resources at hand.
Yeah.
Does that translate well then into thinking of the cybersecurity ecosphere?
I think so. When I was a regimental commander, as a colonel, I used to tell my headquarters that if I could not talk, if I could not communicate both up and down, that we as a regimental headquarters were ineffective, that we wouldn't be able to support the battalions and the mission that we were assigned. I think that translates very well to what I did in the cyber domain. I talk a lot about fighting the network. That you have to be, it's a platform, it's a weapon system, it's a domain in which you maneuver through, and you're fighting for dominance, and really you're fighting for that decision advantage, the ability to ensure the joint force can shoot, move, and communicate while maintaining a decision advantage over our adversary. And I know in the prep we talked about resiliency. So
yes.
Absolutely, resiliency is a factor, not only from a hardware, firmware, software perspective, but it's resiliency of the individual operators, the ability to revert back to, I'll call it maybe legacy ways of communicating if we are denied in a certain domain. But it's also resiliency and the ability to innovate and take advantage of new technology that's being quickly onboarded and integrated into our networks, which is one of the benefits of this conference such as this.
It is. Now, being at this conference, yesterday I had the honor of hosting the AI Summit, so speaking about emerging technologies and how it's adjusting the threat attack surface, but also how it's augmenting teams.
Absolutely.
Now that in a very simplistic way, feel like this is creating a more dynamic security posture requirement. And do you view like going from cyber operations that you have been involved with, is there a time where you can go, well, man, it was still much more static security operations and that now we're in a much more dynamic security operations situation?
I'd first go back, and what I used to tell my Marines is, again, think of the network as a dynamic living thing, platform, and space. And then you're maneuvering through it, that the domain always changes.
Right.
Whether that's you're changing the domain based on the threat, or you're changing the domain based on, or your network based on new capabilities that you're connecting to that allow you to do something that you couldn't do yesterday. In terms of artificial intelligence, I would still I believe the attacker has the advantage still for a variety of reasons. They just need to be lucky once. They have a different risk calculus. And for the defender, and I see the gap closing as we can leverage artificial intelligence, across our networks, but also enable the individual defenders.
How does that overlap with tech debt?
Yeah, so great question. We dealt considerably on how you modernize a network at the same time you're trying to replace it. And if you don't have the resources to replace it, how then are you taking on board new technology that can incorporate and still protect that legacy infrastructure or hardware, because that is a vulnerability, and trying to deny that to the adversary is a constant challenge.
Now, you're here supporting Sicura, and there was a recent announcement about the SCM platform. Will you speak more on that?
Yeah, from a secure perspective, anything that we can do to automate across our networks, the number of processes that still remain manual will be key. That agility will help. It'll help drive speed of operations. It'll help increase the level of confidence in the data that we are passing, and it'll allow us to take those service members, servicemen and women, and civilians, and put them on other tasks that remain unfilled or gapped.
Really? Okay. This is making me think of something from the Cybersecurity Trends report that was published here at InfoSec World. And it had to do with that there was 1,600 respondents, 800 executives, and 800 were practitioners. Now, you said you view yourself as a practitioner.
Yeah, I consider, yes. I still tell folks that my kids help me with my phone.
There was one statistic in particular that I found it interesting first, that they asked this question, and then what the response was. And it was that 41% of Gen Z employees are actively sabotaging company AI policy.
Okay. So that's challenging. I don't know if I'd put that in the category of insider threat, but it's certainly a concern.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. It certainly is. And, the tools that can identify that sort of behavior beforehand or identify it while it's happening, absolutely critical. Still, perhaps one of the greatest vulnerabilities is that 18 inches between the screen and the back of the chair, right, is the user. And so how are you onboarding anybody? When I think about cybersecurity, for me, end to end, it starts with not only the concept of what the network is going to look like, what the end state, what you need it to do, but it's also the hardware, it's the people, right? It's the infrastructure, a lot on the security of AI. I would say, what about the security of the energy or power that's fueling that AI? Where's the weak link along that chain?
I agree, and we keep going on things that touch on you're going to have to bear with me because we're going on my memory recall of this report from a year ago, but it was the cyber resiliency report that was provided to the White House. And regarding the state of cyber resiliency, one of the points that was near and dear to my heart was that the official recommendation was, in critical infrastructure situations, you must have people still trained on fully manual operation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I would say when I left, we were still training Marines to be able to do the same thing. And I do see that continuing. There's a new director in the Office of National Cyber Directorate, Sean Carncross, who is working on updating that national cybersecurity strategy. I'm confident that how we address critical infrastructure across the nation will be addressed. But there has to be an understanding that, and perhaps a redefinition of, when I look at critical infrastructure, obviously my focus has been on defense critical infrastructure. One, identifying all of that. If you think about how the Department of War mobilizes and moves people and equipment from their fort or base to a port or an airfield. How do they move that? And everything along that way, whether it's a railway station, it's the airport or port itself, it's power stations, all of that is, I think, could be considered defense critical infrastructure. And so whoever owns that particular piece of infrastructure, are they resourced? Are they trained accordingly to be able to provide the cybersecurity that we think is necessary based on the threat that's out there?
It's such a beautifully intricate proposition, and it follows so many different paths. I'm very glad to hear about that, about the every single point, whether it's the transportation, the trucks, the power, the other parts. It all comes together. Like I think like as an industry, we get very focused on S-bombs now, or F-bombs, or other things like that. And I'm going, guys, but still, you can just kill the power over here at this transfer station, and you're kind of done the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add, you talk about resiliency, and I briefly hit upon it, is people. So from the threat that we dealt with, there's a lot of threats from a cognitive perspective as well. And so if you can imagine, and you saw it, whether it's caused by a natural disaster or colonial pipeline, just the impact on the psyche when you don't have access to money, fuel, water, or there's a lack of trust in those systems. That can cause an impact on your psyche. So.
It does. I'll go back to, I think it was around 2010, 2011. I lived in fantastic North County, San Diego. My office was in Escondido. And one afternoon, the power went down. So figuring at the office, the power is out, it'll come back on. Well, it didn't come back on, it didn't come back on. No, what had happened was I still don't know if I know for sure what exactly happened, but it was at like one transfer station near Yuma, Arizona, a uninitiated tech had done something wrong and took out power to over 8 million people at once. And so there were no stoplights, there were no ATM access, no fuel, you couldn't buy anything at any store. There was nothing like that. Now because I'd always driven back roads, I went over the mountains and stuff and I got home, right? I had basic provisions, but talking about that psyche component, I lived on a very nice street right at the cliff over the ocean. So it's an affluent, nice, simple area. And within 4 hours of getting home, the man who lived across the street had pulled out plywood and was boarding up his windows and had started taking down all of his external things and locked himself inside and padlocked. That was without having power for 4 hours.
Yes. And so I don't want to be, somebody said, I don't want to be an alarmist, I want to be a realist. So how do you prepare? How do we as a nation prepare for those? And there's adversaries, but there's natural disasters. There's aggressive squirrels that are that are eating power lines, right? I mean, how are we resourced? And that's why I go back to having a strategy with a clear vision, end state that's resourced. I think is really important, and I know folks are getting after that.
And so you are here with Sicura, and what is your focus in these days right now, here at InfoSec World?
Mine is really about the partnership. I think I see it in this conference again as a unique opportunity. What is and how are we taking advantage of the partnership between academia, private industry, and government at the federal, state, and local level? How are we putting that all together so that we can, no kidding, scale cybersecurity across the country, and also the education piece. Not just academia for the education, that's absolutely critical, but academia for their ability to innovate at their school, at their campuses.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Was it more along the idea of academia being augmented so that for future education is more useful, or do you mean like this moment?
Both.
Okay.
Absolutely both. Is how are we educating tomorrow's generation to deal with what we think the world will look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, understanding the impact of artificial intelligence, but also their ability to innovate. All that great work that's happening on universities, campuses, schoolhouses across the nation. How are we bringing that in, integrating it with what private industry is doing, integrating that with your state and local and federal government and their resources? I think if we can, again, we'll go back to strategy. If we
But
can,
that's also community.
it is community. Yeah, it's local community. So you mentioned water, right? In your local town, how is your water treatment facility protected? Is that a question that's coming up during the town hall meetings?
Right.
Should it be?
Right.
Are we talking about artificial intelligence in our high schools? If not, should we?
Fair. So with that, we're going to have to close our wonderful interview here.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan, for joining us. For all InfoSec World 2025 coverage, please visit securityweekly.com/ISW and stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome to InfoSec World 2025. We're here recording live from the CyberRiskTV studio on the expo floor at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Orlando. I'm your host, Mandy Logan, and joining me for this interview is Rob Allen, Chief Product Officer at ThreatLocker. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Mandy. Good to be here.
Thank you. It's wonderful to see you again. I almost wore my ThreatLocker t-shirt too. So, I have been given direction that we are to discuss misconfigurations.
You say that as if we're even remotely going to possibly stick to that actual direction.
No, but we're
let's
taking this
run
as
with
the
it.
kernel
Yeah.
from which we will grow.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good way of describing it.
Okay, so with your background, expertise, and your positioning with ThreatLocker, tell me like a good synopsis of what is a misconfiguration, what is going on with it, and where do you see it going, and what are the problems?
So interestingly, misconfigurations from our perspective, misconfigurations can be something that somebody has done with our tool.
Okay.
That's one kind of misconfiguration. So somebody sets
You
up
mean like them not using ring fencing right?
That would be an example.
Okay.
So some of the configurations that we check are, is this thing ring fenced appropriately? Another example would be, and these are things that we've actually seen happen, so somebody accidentally sets up a policy to allow anything to run from the users folder. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not a great idea, and the issue is previously you would have no visibility of that. I mean, you could go looking through all your policies, trying to figure out why things are allowed, but the likelihood is you're probably going to find out about something like that when it's too late, so when it's been misused. On top of that, you have other misconfigurations, so not ThreatLocker specific misconfigurations, but like Windows misconfigurations.
Okay.
You should set encryption on this, or your password policy isn't long enough, or complex enough, or whatever the case may be. The problem with misconfigurations is very often you don't find out about them until it's too late, until they've been weaponized, until they've been misused. So the idea of our DAC product is to check for those common misconfigurations, both ThreatLocker ones and also not ThreatLocker ones, tell you why they're important, so give you some information, like this is a summary of it, this is why this is a risk, map it against compliant frameworks as well. So if you're looking to work towards CIS or NIST or whatever the case may be, but say, well look, this is what NIST says about this type of configuration or misconfiguration, this is what CIS says about this type of misconfiguration. And also to give people actionable steps. So this is how you fix this problem. So it's no good just saying, this is the problem, go figure it out yourself. We'll actually explain what the problem is, why it's important, which frameworks it applies to, and tell people how to fix it, whether it be a ThreatLocker solution or a outside of ThreatLocker solution.
So, fantastic. And is that then different or synonymous with improper provisioning?
It is, people talk about improper
talking
provisioning, they talk about configuration drift is something that people will commonly say, well look, is this going to help us with configuration drift? The way I'd like to describe it is it's more like a fresh set of eyes. It's a new, fresh look at the configurations within your environment. So you think you're adhering to NIST, for example. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but this is actually going to check 170 different things every single day on every single machine. So it will both catch misconfiguration or configuration drift, but it will also be effectively a fresh set of eyes. You say you're adhering to this framework, maybe you're not, and here is the evidence, here is the proof, here is how many of your machines this problem exists on, and here is the solution to it.
That sounds very relieving to me, and yet it makes me question with what is DCA pulling from, especially from the things that are not within the ThreatLocker system. Like, so if you're looking at, well, this is just a Windows misconfiguration, has ThreatLocker's team compiled, hey, these are the most common misconfigurations in a Windows environment or in this situation or in your servers? Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. And as I said, there's 170 of them today, and there's more being added every single week.
I thought that was specific to NIST. Okay.
No, it's not specific to NIST. This is across all the different frameworks. Some of them are common across frameworks. Block inbound RDP, for example, stuff like that. It's going to be common against frameworks, or, administrators or users have administrative privileges when they shouldn't. Again, that's common across frameworks. But yeah, it's most common ones, but it's also being added to daily and weekly. So
Right.
as I said, today it's 170 things that we're checking. Tomorrow it might be 200, 250. We're adding to that list all the time.
Now, within the ThreatLocker dashboard, is that a separate report or request that is run, or is it part of everything?
It is included with all modules. Anybody who's got ThreatLocker will have this defense against configurations dashboard available to them where they get all that information. So it's not an extra product. It's not something that people need to pay for. As I said, our mission with this is to identify weaponizable or problem configurations before they get misused, before it's too late.
And what have you seen as far as success with this?
We start with many things, we start with ourselves. So we run these things in our own environment. Our patch management was another great example of that. Whereas we were using a third-party patch management tool, it was checking all our machines every day. It was coming back every day, every week, every month, going, everything is fine, everything is up to date. Then we set our own patch management loose on it and discovered all of this random software sitting around in people's downloads folders and portable applications and applications sitting on people's desktops that were not patched. So we use ourselves as a test case with this, and again, we set defense against configurations in our own environment, and a lot of stuff showed up that we didn't even know was there. And again, that's the whole purpose of this. That's the whole idea.
Say, how satisfying that is.
Quite.
It's horrible to realize that it was like that.
Quite.
But how satisfying.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As I said, the patch managers is probably the best example because it was literally setting us side by side with another tool that we used every single day that we thought was doing its job, and then all of a sudden we went, it was missing all of these things.
Oh, wow. So thinking of that makes me think of a part from the Cybersecurity Trends report released here at ISW. And I want to refer, actually, I think I have the numbers here. Nope. Maybe I got rid of it. And it showed that 35% of human employees were paying for their own AI tools.
Well, believe it.
So we're discussing this part of extreme shadow IT. To me, that becomes not just that, they are doing this on their own. They are doing it probably for a purpose, but how does ThreatLocker help with that situation?
It's probably we this year introduced a web control product, and it's probably the most commonly asked for category number one, but it's also the most common question we're asked in terms of where users can go on the internet is how do we block users from accessing LLMs and AI tools? So web control basically does that. We've got an entire category. It will block all of them except the ones that you want people to be able to access. So if you say, we use Copilot, you can create an exception and say, Copilot is accessible within my environment. But again, look, a lot of this comes down to, yes, you can apply controls, but then somebody goes home and they're doing work from home and then they're using their home computer and then they decide to go on to whatever the case may be. It's something internally that we have, obviously from a product perspective, AI is not our thing. It's not, we don't need to use it, I suppose, is the way to describe it. But some of our product team may find it beneficial. So we've got paid subscriptions. So, it's kind of a procedural thing as well. Now, obviously, we've got very clear directions as to how these tools should be used and not used. But realistically, if people would benefit from them, then I would say that in a lot of cases, it would be in organizations' best interest to just pay for it for people. Don't have them having to go and pay for ChatGPT themselves, just pay for it for them. It's $20, $30 a month.
Fair.
It's a relatively easy solution to the problem, as I said, or just block them entirely.
Very true. Now, for our audience, I'd like you to clarify ThreatLocker's stance on AI and what you mean on why you don't need to use it.
So, a lot of the tools that are out there today lean on AI to help them make decisions about what's good and what's bad. Okay. So is this
you
thing
mean that's
good?
Separate from just looking at the summary, you're finding anomalies of using the aggregated data that they're able to use?
Absolutely. They're basically saying, look, the behavior of this thing, I'm going to use AI to try and figure out if that is behaving badly, or it's something that should be stopped, or something that should be blocked or deleted, or whatever the case may be. So because of the approach that we take, which is to deny first, so deny by default, we're not depending on making decisions about what's good and what's bad. mean, fundamentally, we don't care about what's good and what's bad. We don't care if the thing that you're trying to run is the nicest, best, least likely to be weaponized software in the entire world. We're still going to block it because fundamentally blocking things is what we do. But because we take that approach, because we deny by default, we're not depending on making decisions about what's good or what's bad. And the problem with making decisions is it only takes one decision to be wrong for it to be game over. So it doesn't matter if you're right 99.9% of the time, it's the 0.01% of the time that it's wrong that will get you.
Then what is ThreatLocker's methodology for going, well, here's the information that you need? If you're saying you're not looking at something that's right versus wrong, then what is the actionable information provided?
So, as I said, deny by default means that pretty much everything that's running will be blocked by default. But equally, we try and give both users and administrators information about what is trying to be run. So, for example, say a Chrome extension, Cooper, the coupon clipper. Not a lot of people know that's made in China. So we have a product research team that are basically, they have the rather unenviable task of researching every piece of software, every Chrome extension, everything they can find, and giving people information about what it does, what it has access to when it's running, and where it's made. So again, the fact that it's made in China is obviously relevant and might influence a user's decision as to whether or not to request permission to be able to use it. So we literally pop up on the screen when they get a block, this is Cooper, it's a coupon clipper, it's made in China, and it can access your passwords, your website, whatever the case may be. But equally from an application...
I want to clarify then, you're keeping the decision in the human's
No,
control.
we are educating the human user in whether or not the thing that they're asking for is actually something they should be trying to run on a business computer.
Okay.
On top of that,
So
when
like
it comes
informed consent, a new part of that.
to some extent, yeah, to some extent. But on top of that, from an administrator perspective, we give people a testing environment where they can run software. So it's effectively a VDI where they can detonate software, see how it behaves, see if, all the files that this piece of software installs in your machine, do any of them match virus total, for example. So basically a safe and secure environment to actually run software, check it out, see if it behaves. The other thing is most applications in most environments that people run will match one of our built-ins. So like say I try to run Creative Cloud Installer. The likelihood is that will match one of our built-ins because that's an application definition that we manage. If I try and run some dodgy cracked version of Adobe Creative Cloud, it's not going to match our built-in. So that is something that should immediately set off an administrator to go, hold on a second, this isn't actually a legit version of this software. So again, it comes down to informing both the user to try and stop them unnecessarily asking for things that they shouldn't have, and also the administrator to help them make an educated decision as to whether or not this user should be allowed to run this thing. I didn't even mention Insights. So one of the things we introduced this year at Zero Trust World was what we call ThreatLocker Insights, which is, how to describe this? So all of our customers' data is completely siloed. So organization A and organization B, they are completely separated. But there is certain information that is relevant across all environments. So, how often a file runs, or has this file ever been seen before, or when was it first seen in the wild? That kind of information is valuable to an administrator making a decision. So with Insights, what we did was we took limited certain information, like, as I said, things running, where they're accessing the internet, what other programs they interact with, put it in a big central database, do funky stuff with it that I don't quite understand. I know cubing was part of it. I don't even know what that means, I will confess. But basically anonymize it, cube it, and make it available for everyone. So you can see in one screen, in one button click, how often this file has been run across other environments, how often this file is permitted across other environments, denied, when it was first seen in the wild, how it usually behaves. And that's really valuable information because previously, if we wanted to see a particular file, where it ran, where it got blocked, we could run searches across 5, 6, 7, 10, 12, 15, 20,000 SQL databases. That would take days. Whereas with Insights, we can give them that actionable information immediately.
Okay, I want to end on that point because that is blowing my mind a little bit.
It's the biggest of big data.
It is. And then I'm going, wait, and you're still not using AI to aggregate, summarize, catalog, or do anything else. So this is fascinating. It makes me want to know
Yep.
about your infrastructure more too. Well, Rob, thank you so very much
been a
for
pleasure,
joining
Mandy.
us.
Thank you.
Wonderful. To find out more about ThreatLocker, please visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker ISW. Thank you for joining us. And for you viewing from home or work or a cruise ship, thank you for joining us here. Please visit securityweekly.com/ISW. Stick around, we'll be back for our daily wrap up soon. Welcome to InfoSec World 2025. I'm your host, Mandy Logan, and it's time to close out our coverage from day one here at the expo floor at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort. As a delight and privilege and surprise in a way, I am joined by John Del Mauro, the Executive Vice President of National Events for CRA.
Correct, yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I am thrilled that you are joining because I felt like moving from the actual content part of ISW will go to what is the infrastructure planning and the overall setup of ISW. And I would love for you to tell me a little bit more of your background and then what you see as a particular highlight with what ISW brings to the community.
Sure. So I've been producing events for over 25 years in different size and scale. Started my career in a financial services media business and ran over 60 live events in financial services for banking, insurance, investment management, benefit management, healthcare, and produced events in all kinds of size and scale, from 200-person conferences and hotels to large multi-thousand-person events in convention centers. So, and probably one of the biggest rewards I get is that you get to continue to build, and execute these events with the team and take a lot of pride in what we do and execute. And bringing together buyers and sellers and communities to these events has been incredibly rewarding over my career.
I'm so glad to hear that. I find it fascinating because I feel like even though today I'm more on the cybersecurity side, there's all of those variables that have to be accounted for. And you're talking very intensely about the human variable. Mm-hmm. So with part of that, when you're looking at forecasting what content will be brought to a particular conference at a particular time, walk me through some of that process.
Yeah, a funny piece of that is when I work with a number of editors and they said, I don't know how you do this, as we have to write like for now and what the trends are going to be, and you have to go build content in a conference in a theme, 6 months to a year in advance. So you've got to be pretty progressive in thinking and looking over the horizon of what's going to be important in a year to 6 months. When you're recruiting speakers, you're building a theme and trying to tie all that together when it comes through the execution of the event down the road. So that's always been making sure that we are advancing what we're trying to achieve to make sure that the value is to the attendees, the speakers, and then the exhibitors and sponsors of the event.
That's great. Now with ISW being, this is its 31st year.
31st year.
Right. How many years have you been involved with it?
This is my, if you count the events that were scheduled and canceled because
right.
of a number of natural things, but this is my 5th year running the event.
5th year. So with what have you noticed change? Now, my very limited understanding is that attendance has grown even through COVID shutdowns.
Yeah, so, when I took this over, we had to move it due to COVID for years had been a March program, moved it to September, then had to continue to kind of move it forward. The following year, the Delta variant, I think it was called at the time, so we had to then again take it from in-person to online. And then this is the 3rd year that we've been back here in person with a full-scale, fully executed program and event.
And is this the first year of the AI, CISO, and Women in Cyber Summits?
Yes, yeah. So one of the things that I've done in my career and that we've tried to do here is continue to evolve the experience, evolve the content, elevate what we're doing. We've done the CISO. We ran the Women in Cyber as a breakfast last year,
right,
and had over 150 participants. And this year we've expanded that to be like a full half-day program. So, we test things, get feedback, and then try to really make that part of the program and the experience for the event. And so that's what we did this year. The AI Summit was new this year. I don't think you can go into a session or have a conversation about any industry, but you heard today in the keynote about the disruption and what AI is going to bring to cybersecurity and to the professionals that support this industry. So obviously it's going to be just part of the program moving forward in all elements.
And I'll give a tiny bit of feedback because getting to host and be involved in the AI Summit all day yesterday, I had feedback from several participants that this was their first ISW and they came specifically because of the AI Summit.
Right.
And I feel like when you hear feedback like that and you understand that your forecasting is working well and it's what the people need and what they are facing day to day, is there a sense of pride or accomplishment, or how does that go for you and your team when you see that success?
No, absolutely. I mean, that's, this business is always challenged with competitors, right? Especially within this market, there's thousands of cybersecurity events. So if you don't differentiate yourself, if you don't bring value to, like I said, the speakers, the attendees, and certainly the sponsors and exhibitors, somebody else will do it, right? And so you have to make sure that you're continually being different, driving value, and making sure the investment of people's time and money are really seen through, the course of 3 or 4 days that they're going to spend here.
Oh, I am so glad to hear this, and I'm very, very proud of seeing the success that these new additions are having. I mean, I've seen it and heard it on the show floor. I've heard it from attendees that I have been around. So thank you for giving us a little bit more of insight here. Yeah. And is there anything you can suggest to our audience about if they want to get involved with content such as speaking or doing presentations or trainings? What is the pipeline for that? Yeah,
sure. So we, the minute this ends, we start planning for next year. We've actually started planning for next year already. So we'll have a call for papers that'll be launched in probably January. Okay. So they can submit their proposal, their speakers. We go through a formal vetting process with the advisory board of topics and themes. Try and get through the ones that might be a little bit more salesy versus more enterprise, more business, and try and bring those through the committee and get them, to come up on stage during the conference. And so in addition to that, we also do our own research and look at best-in-class content speakers. Certainly the main stage is more curated than probably the breakouts. The breakouts are probably a little bit more drilled down, a little bit deeper than what you'd get on the main stage. But we have over, 200 speakers here. The accreditation is a big part of what we do in delivering credits to the audience. So making sure that, as I've said, value to the paying participants is incredibly important and special to us.
Nice. And I'll say one more thing. I really valued with the AI Summit, when I met with Chris Tanaka previously about that, and I said, she'd asked my input, and I said, well, I would personally go for 70% technical and 30% not.
Right.
So interestingly, after I had the prep information, I ran it through one of my very trusted, and it was, clean data, but I ran it through one of my bots and asked for its breakdown, and it came up as 67% technical and the otherwise. I was like, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah. And that's all, you have to strike the balance because you want to make this applicable and marketable to many different folks. Right. And so one of our challenges is how do you balance, what's too technical, what's not too technical, and making sure somebody that comes here and doesn't walk away and say, well, that was too just technical fluff, and over my head, or it's too, strategy that I need more of the kind of meat and potatoes.
Well, John, thank you so much for joining us.
No, it's my pleasure. This is great.
Is fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
And thank you for tuning into CyberRiskTV's InfoSec World live coverage today. We will be back for day 2 with more interviews right here on the Expo show floor. In the meantime, you can head over to securityweekly.com/ISW to find all of our coverage of InfoSec World 2025. I'm Mandy Logan, and I will see you tomorrow morning.